the systems start to just serve a system instead of serving people. If I don't understand the purpose of this
Right.
system and the tools that we're using, I will not use it. I want the outcomes to be that people are better off because of the knowledge being applied. Every person has something incredibly valuable to offer. And the question is how are you going to
Mm-hmm.
use that to support other people? Because a gift is meant to be shared. When you're
Mm-hmm.
giving to others, that gives us a sense of purpose. At the end, those relationships remain strong. They remain powerful. I want to make sure that they are
Yeah.
empowered to have great relationships and work together. And that's always what sings for me.
Hello and welcome to the Differentiation Podcast. My name is Michèle Sorgaroli, and today we are being joined by our very special guest, Julia Chung. Julia is someone who brings a rare level of clarity and humanity to financial planning. She's the co-founder and CEO of Spring Planning, a firm that is focused on legacy, family enterprise, and decision making that supports people to live the life they actually want to live. Julia has over 25 years of experience in finance, and she has a deep, deep love of learning. And she's known for making emotional conversations more grounded, more thoughtful, and more empowering. And I'm delighted to welcome you today, Julia. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be
Yeah.
able to sit down and spend some time with you.
Yeah, it's a bit of a treat. We've known each other for some time now, and I get to take you down a path of sharing your story, which is really exciting for me. So thanks for being
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
All
it's
righty,
great.
so let's kick it off. So I've already indicated you've spent some time around money and financial planning, families, decision making. Tell us a little bit about this humanity side of the business. What sparked your interest in the human side of financial planning?
I think it's that it's so strange to me that that's not the place that everybody has always
Mm,
started because, I started working in finance and definitely working on the numbers side and not directly with people. And as much as that kind of stuff was interesting, reading P&Ls and organization charts and being
as
like,
I know
okay.
you can go deep in that
Yeah. It's
without
like,
too much
ooh, how,
trouble.
how is this organization organized? And then how do we buy it and when? I mean, that was kind of interesting. And then it got to a point where it's like, okay, well, I mean, there's only so many iterations of the way companies can work and the way that we can get to know investment assets. And it just started being less interesting. And I've always been more interested in people. Like, why are they even doing this? Why would somebody want to put their money into this thing? When do they want to take it out? Why is that important to them? What is it about people that drives them to do all the things that they do? And how do they make those decisions? So that's always been, the driving force behind my curiosity about just about everything is why people? Why? So it was pretty easy for me to find that path right through finance.
Yeah, I think you're really drawing on something that your level of curiosity is remarkable. And I think, what you highlighted, I just want to pull this out because I think it's fascinating. You went through the number side of thing, and there are only so many iterations. There's only so much complexity in the numbers, and there is a fair bit,
Yeah,
but humans are infinitely complex,
they are.
and the iterations are limitless, essentially. And when what I'm hearing from you is your curiosity is such that complexity really engages you. Is that
It
accurate?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I want to pull apart the puzzle and try to understand, how did this come to be? And is it doing now, whatever it is, or whatever the
Yeah,
people are we
yeah.
doing now what we intended to do? Or did we just start building complexity on top of complexity? Like what's the driving force? What's the purpose? Where are we trying to go
Oh,
here?
that's
And
interesting.
does this whatever serve that?
Oh, that's really interesting because you're so right. Building complexity on complexity is really easy.
So easy. And people think that it's not. Like we get into these, complex conversations where you do have families with lots of
Yeah.
money and more problems, right? And then more people and more things. And a lot of times certainly in the financial and tax and legal professions, we can start to just build a wrapper of more complexity on top of the existing complexity instead of just digging into why. And do we
Mm,
need this? The systems start to just serve a system instead of serving people.
Oh, I love that. Systems serve a system instead of serving people.
Yeah.
So when did that coin drop for you? At what point in your trajectory? Because you started with the numbers and the systems, and at some point people entered the equation. Do you remember how and when that happened?
I think, yeah, it would have started around. So there was a time where I was working on a US equity trade desk and also providing sales assistant support to what we then called stockbrokers. But nobody calls themselves that anymore because I always ended up having about four jobs at the same time. I'm pretty sure that's a me problem. I used to think it was other people. It's me. But yeah,
Complexity.
I was doing kind of three jobs, and one of them was supporting a stockbroker because I wanted to understand, like I could see what was happening on the trade desk, but then I didn't know what was happening on the other side, the people submitting the trades and why they were doing that. So I wanted to get to know him, and so I got to know him, and then he started introducing me to the people that he
Mm,
was supporting, and I was like, oh, those are neat. Oh, and then I'm hearing these conversations that he's having with
mm.
those folks, and I'm like, I have more questions. And I want to dig into this a little bit more. And so I stopped working on the trade desk and
Hmm.
started taking even more courses and kind of more wealth management-y stuff than and really found that, there's so much opportunity to meet new people and learn about them and understand the dynamics of what they're doing and dig into, what is all this for? Why do we have these systems?
Yeah, again, there's that curiosity coming up. I wrote down drive to understand. You're very driven to understand how the system works and what the system is serving and the dynamics in play. Was this always part of who you've been since, your youth? How did this all kick off? Like, let's go back to childhood, your environment. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how you became you.
Well, my parents are both immigrants to Canada. My mom came from the UK and my dad came from Hong Kong, and they met in Calgary
Mm.
um, at a party that my mom was throwing. Um, I actually have a picture of the very first time that my mom saw my dad because
Oh my
she was
gosh.
sitting on her roof taking pictures of all the people coming in. And
That's so cute.
it was the 70s near a college, so we can probably guess what kind of a party it was. And as I understand, my mom might have made a little bit of money off that party. Um, anyways, they got to know each other really well and were pregnant with my brother within about 6 weeks. And
Oh,
and they decided to stay. So at that point they were, permanent residents but not citizens. And
okay.
so they decided to get married and stay. And they went from Calgary to Whitehorse
Oh my
for
gosh.
reasons that are still unclear to me. And they just kind of dug into like we're going to be Canadian and get like be as Canadian as possible. And so
Mm.
they got jobs in my dad was working in mining and then they were both working at Canada Post, which is, pretty Canadian, and they learned how to hunt and fish and all this kind of stuff. And then I was born there
Oh.
as well. And I am apparently to blame for why we moved south, because the baby couldn't handle the cold. So I was about 3 years old, and my understanding is my parents packed up everything and basically drove south until they found a place they liked, which ended up being the Sunshine Coast off the southern
Oh my
coast of BC.
gosh. Yeah.
So I like to say that I enjoy planning and
Mm.
finding reasons behind why we might do things because I would say that when my parents were young, they weren't big planners.
Mm-hmm.
A
Mm-hmm.
little bit like, I think we're going to do this now. I think we're going to do that now. And my
Yeah.
dad was and is an entrepreneur, many, many businesses throughout my childhood.
Okay.
My mom taught business administration and organizational behavior through SFU. So we kind of see two sides of a similar coin where we have a
Mm-hmm.
very active entrepreneur who is very old school in his entrepreneurship. He's often said to me, I'm like a cowboy. And you're like a professional. And I'm like, yeah, there's a direct correlation there. And yeah,
Aw.
so So I'd see my dad actually living in and building businesses and getting stuff right and getting stuff wrong and living through business cycles. And then my mom actually teaching the theory behind it. And I
Oh,
could
that's
always
interesting.
see
Hey,
where theory didn't connect with reality and also where it really could add to reality. So I was always kind of living in those spaces.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be, as you're seeing, it's fascinating to me how parents are often different from one another.
Yeah.
Relationships tend to work that way. And w when you're exposed to that as a child, you get these two extremes, if you will, very often, right? You experience both, and somehow you find yourself navigating between those, and you land somewhere in that spectrum.
Yeah.
So you went from this life of a very dynamic life, lots of movement, change, lots
Oh, yeah.
of spontaneous action, an entrepreneurial family, but also backed by some interesting theory and learned behaviors, if you will, or practices.
Yeah.
Where was your interest in numbers? Did that start in, were you in elementary school whiz kid in math, or how did it
I
work?
was, yeah, that would be a way to put it. So I skipped a couple grades in school and that had its own repercussions. There's some
Mm,
places where that's a good thing, and some ways that wasn't
mm,
great. But yeah, I skipped a couple of grades, and one of the reasons for me moving ahead so rapidly in school was how good I was at math, which anybody who went to high school with me or any of my math teachers in high school would be absolutely shocked about because I did terribly in math in high school, just
interesting.
awful. And in
Mm,
retrospect, I realized, what was working in elementary school math that wasn't working in high school math. And if we know a little bit about how education works and who's teaching and all those kinds of things, elementary school math does tend to focus on practical ways of using mathematical systems. So it was very clear to me that if I'm learning this type of math and that type of formula, I can see how it works in action.
mhm,
Then we get to high school and we get really abstract about it.
mhm.
I, one of the places that I was terrible in high school was
Mm.
algebra.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
do algebra all day long. That's the thing I do is algebra.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I just couldn't understand what it was for. And that kind of goes back to the question I always have is like, what is this for? If I don't understand the purpose of this
Right.
system and the tools that we're using, I will not use it.
Yeah. So that would have been a dramatic impact for you because when it was a practical application inside a system of the elementary school learnings,
Yeah.
you could see you could see why it was important. You could understand the system to apply. You could understand what the outcome would be. And
Yes.
so all of that really served your style and you were good at it. So interestingly, that's reinforcing something in you as well. The practical application, having gone into high school, now it's conceptual
Yeah,
and
it just
theoretical.
became this like abstract thing. I just didn't understand the purpose. And
Isn't
and
that
they'd be like,
interesting?
"Oh, well, one day when you have a job like this and have a job like that, you'll apply it." And I'm like, "Great, how? I want to know how." And I couldn't get it.
Hmm. And so high school was challenging because you're dealing with this abstract lack of application. You couldn't see what it was useful
Yeah.
for. When did that change? What happened? Because you're still in numbers. You didn't run away and go and do, art.
I did run
Or
away and
some,
go
oh,
and
did
do
you?
art.
Okay.
With the skipping ahead grades, you kind of had to be good at almost everything.
Mm,
And I was good at language and arts and those kinds of things. So I had every intention of and spent a little bit of time in some post-secondary art school,
okay.
um, uh, digging into literature, digging into line
Mm,
drawing and painting. And then I became pregnant.
mm,
And as someone who's maybe not an idiot, I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to get a really good job that was going to support my child uh,
mm-hmm,
with a partial liberal arts degree.
mm-hmm,
So
mm,
I was kind of looked at, this is how much time I have, not lots. And I really want to, before my baby is born, have some vocational skills in place that I could put to work pretty much immediately because I'm not going to have EI for maternity leave because I
mm-hmm.
haven't been working. So
Right.
what am I going to do? So I found a private college that had a business administration certification program that they said took 1 year. And I said, I have to do it in 6 months. And they were like, okay, like, we don't think you can. I'm like, I'm pretty sure I can. And so I did. And I finished
Mhm.
it. And then I had my son. And as you might recall from our conversations, my mother died the same week my son was born. And
Forgotten that.
that was it's kind of like this very specific moment in time for me. And
Oh, I'm
yeah,
sorry. Yeah, that'd be hard.
yeah, it's really it was an impactful week. And
Hmm.
um, from there I kind of had to figure a lot of things out, learned
Right.
a lot about estate planning, and what happens when you don't. And yeah, I had to kind of sort out
Mm.
how am I gonna be a parent? How am I gonna be a grown up? How am I gonna pay for myself? I don't have any resources. My mom has passed away. My dad moved to Hong Kong 10 years ago. I got nobody.
Oh my gosh.
And
How old were you at that point, Julie?
19.
Oh wow, you were young.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, it was pretty impactful. So, yeah, and then,
Part of your journey.
I took the education that I had and I got myself a receptionist job and then another receptionist job. Used to work at, you remember Future Shop?
I do.
I worked
Yeah.
at the head office
Oh
there.
my gosh.
And I, for a short period of time, was the voice of Future Shop when you called in,
Oh
and it
my
was
gosh.
like, press one for music. Anyways, um, and
Oh wow.
after I'd been there for a while, I worked with a recruiting firm because I was like, it's time for me to move up. I need to make more money. I need to move on to
Uh-huh.
whatever the next level is. And they found me a job at an investment counseling firm. And I'd had no idea what investment counseling was, pretty much zero
Mm.
experience with what the heck it is they were doing. I walked in, I'm like, do they like just print money here? I don't know what's happening.
Hmm.
And the gentleman I worked for at the time, always a big shout out to David Harris, um, decided that maybe I had something of value to offer
Mm.
the organization and the profession, and he invested in me and got me moving up in my career and moving on to the U.S. equity trade desk there, and that kind of started the pathway into everything else I ended up doing in finance.
Fascinating. I'm hearing, thank you for sharing that. It really speaks to the practical nature of your life experience. Your life, yeah.
Yeah.
Something just happened there. What do you want to say?
Yeah, just practical application of knowledge is really important to me. I love, you know, big fluffy ideas and I love philosophy and abstract thing. It's a good time for me, but I want to know that on a day-to-day basis, if I'm learning something and if I'm teaching something, that it has a use and it has a purpose, and that purpose is to better
Mm-hmm.
people. It sounds maybe like a bit trite, but I mean that. I want the outcomes to be that people, whether directly or indirectly, are better off because of the knowledge being applied.
Why is that so important to you, do you think?
Um, I know that. So my mom she studied philosophy on top of doing business administration and all those kinds of things. Very heart-centered person. So
Mm-hmm.
she worked in elder care, supporting senior citizens.
Mm-hmm.
She worked with the disabled in group homes, and then yeah, she taught in business school, and her intentions and the meaning for her. I mean, she also started a food bank. Um, Community has always been really important part of our family, and understanding how we fit into the ecosystem and that any gifts that we have, which, when you're very little and people tell you that you're the
Mm-hmm.
smartest person in the room,
Mm-hmm.
um, you can either ride on that and become a terrible person,
Mm-hmm.
or you can have the support that my mom definitely gave me, which said, which was every person has something incredibly valuable to offer. These things have been highlighted for you at this point, and the question is how are you going to
Mm-hmm.
use that to support other people? Because a gift is meant to be shared.
Mm-hmm. A gift is meant to be shared. I think you talked about community
Yeah.
being an important piece here, and how you contribute to the ecosystem of the community. I'm going to go back to the story about your parents becoming Canadian,
Yeah.
all in.
Yes.
That might have that model for you to become all in the community, if you will, must have had some kind of an impact.
That's a really good point, actually. I hadn't really thought about it that way. I always just thought it was kind of cute because I could hear my parents,
Mm.
practicing their Canadian accents when I was
Oh,
little. And some of it came from television,
yeah.
which is always
Wow.
kind of funny because there's a couple of my friends that'll be like, "You say this word like an American," and I'm like, "It's probably because of that."
Yeah.
They watch TV and they might have picked up an accent wrong.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, I think that engagement with like they felt really like it was important to understand what it means to be part of Canada. And they talked to us about that, my brother and I, quite a bit. Like, what does it mean to be part of Canada? What does it mean to be Canadian? Why would we, my parents, who didn't come to Canada because they were missing something,
Mm.
why would they choose to be part of this society and this environment? And, things, coming from the UK for my mom and Hong Kong for my dad when it was under UK
Mm.
control
Mm-hmm.
meant that they had a lot of experience with things like class, very
Mm-hmm.
structured class systems, a lot of really open and outward racism. And here they have two children who are mixed race. And, you know, my mom grew up in quite an academic family. Both her parents were professors, and the whole
Oh, wow.
hippie movement and protesting was really important when she
Mm.
was young and when my dad was young. So there was a lot of like really specific thought about the social fabric of
Yeah.
the environment we were growing up in and what it means to be part of that. And, my mom worried quite a bit about us being accepted
Mm.
because not only do we look
Mm-hmm.
different, our parents haven't been here 5 generations. They're new, right? And yeah, there's a lot of things that she wanted to make sure that we understood about belonging to communities. And, a community works when everybody is engaged and participating.
Yeah, thank you for that. I've got a lot of things swirling around in my head. I'm just thinking about the impact of that environment for you as a young woman, a girl, and how, your work today, you work with a lot of families, which in a way it's a community. It's just a different type of community, but families are,
Yes.
you're smiling. So I'm feeling like some of that previous stuff around, gifts are meant to be shared. It's important to be part of a community. How do you contribute to the ecosystem? It's part of the social fabric. How did all of that translate into your work today with families specifically?
I think it kind of permeates almost everything that I do. I think it's just
Mm.
such a big part of my belief system, that, in all the work that I do, whether it's with the families that I work with directly or in my board work on Family Enterprise Canada
Mm-hmm.
or with the Financial Planning Association of Canada, and even with any of the companies I've ever built. It's the way that I see, it's the lens that I use to see the world is that, again, everyone has value and everybody has something to give. And maybe this is the right community for you and maybe it isn't, but there is one. And we all need to find our place in it and we all want to contribute something because, there's really good research that when we are contributing something, when you're
Mm-hmm.
giving to others, that that gives us a sense of purpose. And I mean, you think about like things like AA, one of the steps in it is that you learn how to give back to your community, and that's part of healing. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just so important. And I do see that with the families that I work with. Sometimes there's like some dynamics where it's like we're learning how to be, we're always learning how to be a family together. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that. But like, I think we've kind of realized through discussions and in the world and media and stuff that
Mm-hmm.
like marriage is hard work because over the years you're going to be married to various iterations of the same person as they grow and change. And if we can recognize that inside a marriage, we should be able to recognize that inside a family system, that everybody in that system is growing and changing all the time. And we need to be able to find a way to continually adjust and welcome those different parts of those people as they grow, as they change. We have to come to agreements about what it means to be a member of that family
Mm-hmm.
for me and for you. And, how does that dictate how we're going to work together if we do? How does that dictate how we deal with shared assets if we have those? How
Mm-hmm.
does that dictate that how we communicate about things like estates and transitions and grandchildren being welcomed into the family or parents who are experiencing dementia or any number of things. Families go through that together. And so, yeah, it's a lot of work to strengthen and support those relationships. And there are a lot of financial systems which, if applied poorly to the humans,
Mm.
they don't take off, right? They might look real great. Like you might have a very attractive tax return. And I always say, like, so at what point did you look back at your grandparents' tax return and be like, those folks were smart? You don't. That's not a thing that you keep on your wall, right? But what do you keep? You keep
Yeah.
the memories of the experiences of being with those people and what it meant to be welcomed, to belong, to participate in that family. And what we also have to realize is that financial systems and legal systems and tax systems aren't separate from that. And as we often repeat inside spring planning, how you do anything
Mm-hmm.
is how you do everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if how I have set up this financial structure that impacts you, that's a message and a really strong one. So we want to be thoughtful about that.
Taking a moment for that to sink in for our listeners. Um, so lots of wisdom and depth in that, understanding the role of the family as it's developing its dynamic legacy, if you will. It's changing constantly. I can
Yeah.
hear that it's generously feeding your pursuit of solving complex problems and stimulation.
Yes.
And certainly you can be curious, limitlessly curious, excuse me.
So curious. Like so many things you can find out in the family system. It's so cool.
So I'm curious that when you are engaged in your work with families, um, what is it that most lights you up?
The
When do you
best,
kind of get, you know what I mean, where you're just like, oh, tell me more. Like, I want to solve this problem. This is it. This is the one. There's lots of them, but this is the one I really want to dig into.
I think what I find is where I start with a lot of people and what gets me initially excited is they're usually at or feeling the pressure around a transition point, a big decision, or just some real confusion. And ideally, the people I'm working with are people who are able to say out loud, I love the people who are impacted by the decisions that I'm making. I really don't want to make the wrong one. And I'm worried about how this next decision that I'm moving forward through is going to impact the other people in my life.
Mm.
Because if we can feel our way through that step just to recognize that what we do does impact other people, and to just really be concerned about it. I'm like, "Ah, then this I can dig into, So I have come across people who come to me and they're like, you know lots about numbers and tax and those kinds of things. And, my biggest push here is that we don't pay tax. I'm like, yeah, well, okay.
Hmm.
I mean, that's sure.
Hmm.
But it's not super interesting, right? But if I want to make an impact, or I'm worried about a negative
Hmm.
impact
Hmm.
on humans, whether they're, you know, direct relations
Hmm.
or chosen family, or even, I don't have a lot of family members or friends, but I really want to make an impact in my community through charitable giving, like that people part
Hmm.
is that's what I want to dig into. And I want to find out, like, the things you're asking today. I want to find out, like, where did that come from? What part is of your life experience created this value system for you, right? Like, I know because I've done a lot of work on personal values and so those sorts of things, that like my two top values are community and the practical application of knowledge for the betterment of society. I know that. But and everybody's got different values. And I
Hmm.
want to know what you as an
What do you
individual
care?
and you as a family value. And then how do we make this system, which most people don't use for bettering anything but piles of money.
Hmm.
How do we use that system to achieve this thing that's actually meaningful to you?
Yeah. How does the system serve the people? Where
Yeah.
you started earlier, right? How does the system serve the people? Um, as I'm hearing you, that it's very, very clear that you have a strong and deeply seated um, connection with the decisions and how they impact the people, how decisions impact people. I've heard that a few times from you in this conversation. Um, is there a, is there, I know given your story, I'm reflecting on your story because there were lots of decisions that impacted you
Yeah.
through your story. Um, at what point was is the system or your orientation towards the system, was that something that was learned? Or did that start really in math in elementary school where you had an understanding of the system served an outcome? Is that where that came from, or did it develop more over time, do you think?
I think it probably came from my mom's study of organizational behavior, which is kind of
Okay.
a precursor
Hmm.
to, behavioral science. Um, so it's something she was always talking about. And, my brother and I were sort of research assistants for her when she was doing research or when she was teaching students. So we got pretty immersed in it. The concept of systems thinking, just to
Yeah.
begin with, and all of these things about how there are external systems and internal systems, and how these all relate to each other. um Also, I was diagnosed pretty young with what would they then called hyperactivity disorder, which is now called ADHD. And I would say that probably everybody in my family system has some sort of neurodivergence. So I was lucky enough that my parents had experience with neurodivergent kids because they were
Mm.
them. And they were like,
Mm.
"What? She's normal." Um, but they taught me a lot of
Yeah.
things about how to manage um, what is definitely considered a disorder and not aligned
Mm.
with, these systems that exist. And
Mhm.
part of that was talking through the difference um, between managing habits and managing against systems. So that was when my mom was trying to help me with things like remembering anything ever. It was just like recognizing that what we're not going to try and do is just rely on this thing in my head to record everything perfectly, but instead set up systems and use trial and error to determine which systems work for me, and then
Mm.
reflect on them regularly to say, is this still working? So yeah, I think it was pretty pretty early on that it was all part of just how I operate in the world.
That's awesome. You're speaking to, the leaning on the system to support you. And what I heard was the system can adapt,
Yes.
right? And you talked about that earlier in this conversation about systems adapting as necessary to continue to serve. So I would imagine that had a lot to do with your learning that your own system could adapt as you developed and changed iteratively, if you will.
Absolutely. And, therapy helps as well. I mean, obviously that event where my mom passed away was,
Mm,
seriously impactful. And, oh, coming from
yeah.
a family of neurodivergent people who often have, comorbidities, as they like to say, we're always pretty okay with things like mental health support and
Hmm.
therapy. And so,
Hmm.
going into and getting support around that was, yeah, it's helped me be a stronger, more resilient version of myself,
Hmm.
and also to understand because the
Mm,
various mental health professionals who have supported me over the years, the ones that I worked well with were the ones who were like, oh, I get it. I have to explain this to you. I can't just
mm,
talk to you about
hmm.
it. You're not
Hmm.
just going to be like, oh, okay, I've processed that. No, I've moved through it. Now we have to talk about the theory behind why we're implementing this in your therapy. And yeah, sorry.
Hmm. Hmm. Again, that curiosity is coming in because you want to understand. Well, what I'm hearing too, Julia, is that when you understand what the fundamentals are inside the system, it allows you to actually be more effective and dynamic in your problem solving as you're integrating all that complexity, right?
Yeah,
Is that
that's
what I'm?
right. Because if you understand how the system works and why it
Yeah.
works that way, then as you as a person adapt and as life adapts around you, you can see, oh, like the system works like this, but there's this one little piece over here, which is
Hmm.
now an artifact because life and the world has
Hmm.
changed. The rest of the system can still be, operating, but we might have to replace this piece. And
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
knowing that means that we can be dynamic with the world that changes around us.
Yeah, I've heard this so many times from you, the sense that you have a really strong sense that nothing lives in isolation and
Mm.
everything relates somehow to something else. And whether the system is formalized or whether it's an informal system that has just happened because it's in existence, regardless, things are all relating to one another. And those dynamics, no matter what decision is made, it's going to impact and going to have a cascade
Yes.
effect on other systems.
Yes. That is my favorite part to think through. It absolutely, like, I get so jazzed about that, where it's like, oh, this is happening over here. Oh, but if we do that, then this happens over here, and that has an impact over
Yeah.
there. And then that means we have to have a reaction over here. And did you know that the long-term consequences might actually look like this? And that really where we want to go? Oh, best time ever.
There you go. You lit. You just described your happy place.
Yep, that's it.
So, as you're thinking about, and yeah, I do, as you know, I do all this work around differentiation, and much of differentiation is understanding exactly what we've talked about today. It's understanding where your gifts apply in impactful ways to create higher levels of value, right? And helping people understand those. When you're thinking about the work that you do and your gifts, sharing your gifts with your clients, can you think of a story without breaching any privacy or anything? Can you think of a story or a time in your work where you have felt truly impactful at the level of purpose and community that was important to you? Is there something you'd like to share with
Yeah,
us?
I've got a couple. There's a couple of families I've worked with, and I'll do kind of like a mesh, but there's a couple
Yeah.
of families I've worked with, um, where there was a transition of ownership in an active business. And in some of those families, that transition happened because it was thoughtful and we were planning for it. And some of them, it happened because there was a health situation or
Hmm.
somebody passed away. And in my father's family, there was a transition of active business and wealth when my grandfather died, and it went horrifically.
Ah,
It went really badly, and a lot of
okay.
people didn't talk to each other for a really long time.
Mm,
And relationships were very badly damaged. And that, obviously had an impact on me because, like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, holidays are not the same. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and whenever I've been able to go through any of those kinds of processes with the families that I work with, there's been a couple that definitely come to mind where, we got to the other side of this and it didn't end up looking like you thought it would at the beginning or I thought it would at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But what did happen at the end is those relationships remained strong, they remain powerful. And if we choose to work together going forward, which for several of my families they do, which is so
Mm-hmm.
cool, um, they're doing it in a really different way and they're doing it in a way where they're able to have a language together where they're like, I understand that what you're hoping to get from this is that, and you understand that what I'm hoping to get from this is this other thing, so let's work together, and they start to problem solve together. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
God, it's so great. And then they'll like call me up and be like, hey Julia, we talked about this and we're thinking this and like here's why.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh my God, do you guys even need me anymore?
Mm-hmm.
You're doing so well. And that's the biggest thing is I'm not ever trying to get people to a place where they can't live without me. They will have to live without me at some point or other. I want to make sure that they are
Yeah.
empowered to have great relationships and work together. And that's always what sings for me.
I just got goosebumps. What I wrote down was, um, wrote down three phrases: strong and powerful relationships that allow a system to thrive and the business to endure.
Goodness. I don't think I should keep that and put that on my business cards.
Well, that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing from you, right? It speaks to the dynamics of relationships, it speaks to the business is, in a sense, a community, and there's
Yeah.
a system that serves the business and the people.
Yes.
Lovely.
It's so great.
Mm, beautiful. Julia, there's been so much today. We could continue to go on because there's so many little gems that I've been pulling out. But as you reflect on today's conversation, just coming to an end, reflecting on what we've talked about, is there anything that you would like to highlight for our listeners as something that you would hope that they remember or that's something of value to them?
I think the most important thing is to remember that at the end of our lifetimes, when we look back on our lives,
Mm,
what would we consider a life well lived? And that should be in the forefront of our minds. And, lucky enough to be around quite a few people as they were close to the end of their lives. And, of course, asking those questions because I'm endlessly curious. Like, so what are you thinking? How did this work out for you? And what do you consider to be the positives that came out of it? And everybody does say, and you know what they say, it's the relationships they had. It's the people that they interacted with. And that is the thing that we want to help people achieve, is that
yeah.
feeling that I had some good relationships. I lived a good life. I'm okay. That's the
Hmm.
best part. And the other thing I did also want to mention is, as you know, I have opened many businesses throughout the years, and there's at least two of them that probably would not have formed even close to the way that they did without you.
Oh,
And
thank
I
you.
just do want to make sure that I acknowledge that your catalyst for you have been, and it's your business title is so incredibly correctly descriptive that you have helped me transform and been a
Mm,
catalyst for me to create the places that I've always wanted to be. So I really
mm,
appreciate you
mm,
and really recognize the gifts that you share
mm.
in the communities you're in.
Thank you, Julia. That means a lot to me. It's my joy is to see when you thrive in your gifts and bring them to life in big ways. Right?
You
It's
can
just,
tell.
yeah. Nothing like authentic gifts coming to life. There's
Yeah.
nothing more beautiful than that. Because they create wonderful things. So thank you. Thank you for that. It's always a joy to have a connection with you and to have the opportunity to chat. And today was just full of so many beautiful gems. that I'm grateful for you sharing your wisdom with us and a little bit more about your story that I didn't know.
Thank
For
you.
those who might like to find you and follow you and get to know a little bit more about you and your work, Julia, where can they find you?
The website's springplans.ca. And I think we're on socials. We're like at Spring Plans all the time for things. You can probably find me. I think I'm like the whole first page of Google when you Google Julia Chung. So
Okay. You're easy to find.
yeah, I can be tracked down. You can find me.
That's beautiful. She's deep in the community, spreading her gifts, sharing her gifts, having an
I had a
impact.
really good marketing friend. So yeah, she went to town on Google.
That's amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you for today. It's been an absolute delight. I'll look
Thank
forward to our
you. It
next
was so
times.
great to be here and to, yeah, to hang out with you for an hour.
Thank you. Bye for now.